It all began with a man named Jordan Belfort, a young, hungry dreamer who stepped into Wall Street with nothing but wild ambition and an unshakable desire to win. He wasn't born into money or privilege. He wasn't handed an empire. But what he did have was charm, the kind of magnetic confidence that could light up an entire trading floor. From the very first moment Jordan entered that world of numbers, noise, and greed, he knew he was home. The air buzzed with adrenaline, phones ringing, men shouting over one another, deals closing in seconds. To him, it was chaos and beauty rolled into one. He could smell success in the air, sharp, intoxicating, and dangerous. At first, he was just another rookie trying to find his place. He learned the ropes the hard way: cold calls, rejections, long nights studying how money moved. But soon, Jordan realized that Wall Street wasn't just about numbers, it was about persuasion. It was about power. And he had a natural gift for both. Then came the crash. Black Monday. The market fell apart overnight, swallowing the dreams of countless brokers. In a single blow, the life Jordan was building collapsed. But instead of giving up, he adapted. He learned that even in ruins, opportunity hides. That's when he discovered the world of penny stocks, the small-time, overlooked, and unregulated corner of finance. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Wall Street. But it was wild and full of possibilities. And in that chaos, Jordan saw something no one else did: a gold mine. He picked up the phone again. His voice smooth, his pitch perfect, his confidence unbreakable. The small-time investors on the other end didn't even know what hit them. He could sell anything, and he did. Within weeks, he was making money faster than he'd ever imagined. But Jordan wanted more: bigger deals, bigger clients, bigger dreams. So he built his own empire. Stratton Oakmont. The name sounded powerful, sophisticated, and utterly fake. But it worked. To his investors, it sounded like old money and trust. To Jordan, it was his ticket to the top. At Stratton Oakmont, the rules were simple: sell hard, party harder, and never, ever say no to profit. The office became a kingdom of chaos, a temple of greed where men in expensive suits screamed into phones like warriors at war. They called it the Wolf's Denmark. Jordan was their leader, the Wolf of Wall Street. He taught his team not just how to sell, but how to manipulate, how to dominate, how to believe they were invincible. His speeches were electric, half motivation, half madness. He could turn fear into fire, doubt into hunger. Act like you're rich, he'd say, and soon you will be. And they did. They drove Lamborghinis, threw champagne like water, and burned through cash as if tomorrow didn't exist. The more they earned, the more they wanted. Greed became their religion, money their god, and Jordan their prophet. The parties were legendary. Nights blurred into mornings filled with neon lights, drugs, and laughter that echoed through the hallways of their glass castle. They lived like kings in a kingdom built on fraud. But beneath the glitter, something darker pulsed: a sickness born of excess. The same ambition that made Jordan unstoppable began to devour him from within. The money never felt like enough. The fame, the women, the drugs, all of it became fuel for a fire that would one day burn out of control. Still, in those early years, he was unstoppable. Jordan Belfort had become more than a man, he was a myth, a symbol of reckless success. The media loved him. The public envied him. And deep down, even his enemies couldn't help but admire him. He built an army of hungry young brokers, misfits, dreamers, and hustlers who would do anything to taste what he promised. Under his command, they became wolves too, tearing through the financial world, preying on the weak and naive. Every deal closed was a rush, every million earned a victory. But with every win came a new danger: the line between genius and crime growing thinner by the day. In boardrooms filled with smoke and arrogance, Jordan and his men manipulated the markets, inflated prices, and tricked investors, all under the illusion of legitimacy. Stratton Oakmont wasn't just a company anymore. It was an empire built on lies. And as the empire grew, so did the chaos. Money was everywhere, spilling out of control. Cash rained down from the ceiling during office parties. Staff were rewarded not for honesty, but for ruthlessness. The louder you shouted, the more you earned. Jordan's charisma was the glue that held it all together, his words a mix of seduction and madness. When he spoke, people listened. When he laughed, they laughed. When he raged, they feared him. He wasn't just living the dream, he was rewriting it. The poor kid from Queens had become the king of greed. But like every empire built on sand, cracks began to show. Behind the roaring laughter and blinding wealth, whispers began to spread. Regulators started watching. Journalists started asking questions. And deep inside Jordan's world of endless pleasure, a storm was gathering, one that would soon shatter everything he'd built. For now, though, he didn't care. The world was his playground, and he was the unstoppable force at its center. The wolf was rising and nothing could stop him. The world now knew his name, Jordan Belfort, the untouchable wolf of Wall Street. Magazines called him a genius. Television hosts wanted him on their shows. Investors lined up outside his glass tower, begging to give him their money. To them, he was the man who turned dreams into gold. To his followers, he was a god, wild, fearless, and unstoppable. The office of Stratton Oakmont had transformed into a fortress of power and insanity. Rows of brokers shouted into phones, their voices echoing like thunder. The air smelled of coffee, adrenaline, and raw ambition. Every few minutes, someone closed a deal and jumped onto a desk, arms raised high as the floor exploded into cheers. Money was no longer paper, it was power, energy, and addiction. Jordan stood at the center of it all, sharp suit, wide grin, eyes burning with confidence. He ruled his empire not with fear, but with fire. His words could raise a man's spirit or crush it in an instant. He told them that life wasn't about working hard, it was about taking what others were too afraid to reach for. And they believed him. Soon, his empire spilled beyond the trading floor. Mansions, yachts, helicopters, private jets, every dream money could buy became reality. He built a life so large it felt unreal. Every morning he woke up in luxury, and every night he fell asleep to the sound of his own success. His wife, Naomi, was his queen, beautiful, smart, and fierce. They lived in a world most people couldn't even imagine, gold-plated everything, servants on call, parties that blurred the line between fantasy and madness. There were no limits, no breaks, no consequences. Drugs became his second heartbeat. They were everywhere, in his pockets, his desk, his veins. They made him feel untouchable, unstoppable, immortal. The line between reality and illusion vanished. He didn't just chase the high, he lived in it. His friends Donnie, Rugrat, Chester, and the rest were more than colleagues. They were his army. Together they ruled the financial jungle, devouring everything in sight. They made millions in hours, lost them in minutes, and never cared because there was always more to take. The parties at Stratton Oakmont became legends whispered about across New York. Bands played live while brokers threw cash like confetti. Dancers twirled around champagne fountains. Jordan would stand above them, grinning, his arms open wide, the king addressing his loyal wolves. "Sell me this pen," he'd say, and the crowd would roar. To them, it wasn't just a challenge, it was scripture. To sell meant to survive. To dominate meant to live. Every success made him louder. Every dollar made him bolder. He bought yachts that could crush waves like mountains, cars that could outrun the wind. He partied on the ocean, flew across continents, and spoke of his own legend like it was destiny. But behind the laughter and flashing lights, small shadows began to form. The government had started to notice. The FBI, the SEC, they were watching from the dark, quietly connecting dots, tracing the rivers of dirty money that flowed from Stratton Oakmont into the world. Jordan didn't care. He thought he was invincible, too clever, too rich, too high to fall. He mocked them from his penthouse, tossing $100 bills into the air like snowflakes. To him, the rules were made for other people, not for wolves like him. Then came Switzerland, the secret vaults, the hidden accounts, the briefcases of cash flown overseas under false names. Money laundering became a game, a thrilling new frontier. Every flight was a risk, every handshake a lie, every smile a mask hiding a secret worth millions. He was deep in the fire now. The wolf had tasted power so intoxicating that he couldn't stop. He didn't want peace, he wanted the storm. But storms don't last forever. One night, after a party that blurred into madness, Jordan found himself staring at his reflection, eyes red, hands trembling. The man in the mirror wasn't the same boy who'd once dreamed of making it big. He saw greed staring back. He saw fear. And for the first time, he felt the walls of his empire closing in. Still, he laughed. Still, he made another call. Still, he said, I'm fine. His world was built on denial, stitched together by confidence and cocaine. The higher he rose, the closer he came to the edge. The cars got faster. The parties got darker. The lies got thicker. And then the accident. The Lamborghini. The drugs. The chaos. It was a moment of madness, a blur of white lines, speed and stupidity that could have ended it all. But he survived, because fate had one more act to play. Meanwhile, the FBI closed in. Agent Patrick Denham, calm, patient, relentless, he wasn't impressed by the charm or the wealth. He watched from the shadows, gathering evidence, learning Jordan's every move. He didn't chase with speed, he hunted with time. Every phone call, every transaction, every offshore account, they were pieces of a puzzle that slowly began to reveal the truth. But Jordan didn't see it coming. He was too busy living his own legend, too busy being the wolf. He thought he could talk his way out of anything, sell anyone, charm any enemy. But charm doesn't work on justice. And lies, no matter how golden, always rot from the inside. The walls were closing in, but the music at Stratton Oakmont never stopped. The parties got wilder, the laughter louder, as if the whole empire was dancing on the edge of its own destruction. He told his men they'd never fall. He told himself the same lie every night. But deep down, he knew something was coming. Something bigger than money. Something that would finally test the wolf's strength. The empire of excess was trembling, and the fall was only a breath away. The storm had finally arrived. For years, Jordan Belfort had lived as if gravity didn't exist, defying rules, laughing at danger, and dancing with the devil in a suit. But every story of power has the same ending, the fall. The FBI was done watching. They moved in quietly, methodically, gathering every piece of evidence like hunters circling a wounded animal. The walls of Stratton Oakmont, once filled with shouts of victory and the ringing of telephones, now echoed with fear. The wolves sensed blood in the air, and it was their own. Jordan still tried to fight it. He made speeches, fired people, shouted about loyalty and glory. But even his voice, once powerful enough to shake a room, sounded hollow now. The empire was cracking from every side. The banks froze accounts, investors pulled out, and regulators swarmed like vultures. Still, he refused to surrender. He thought he could outsmart the government like he outsmarted everyone else. He hired lawyers, moved money overseas, smiled for the cameras, and told himself it would all blow over. But the wolf was bleeding, and the world could smell it. At home, Naomi had seen enough. The woman who once stood beside him in the spotlight now stood against him in the dark. The fights grew louder, the walls thinner. Love had turned into rage, and rage into heartbreak. The drugs, the lies, the danger, she couldn't take it anymore. There's a silence that follows every storm, a cold, heavy silence that says it's over. Jordan felt it the morning Naomi left. No words, no tears, just the sound of the door closing behind her, taking the last piece of his real life with it. The FBI came soon after. They didn't knock, they didn't need to. The headlines screamed, the media swarmed, and the Wolf of Wall Street, once untouchable, was finally in handcuffs. He sat in the interrogation room, the same charm on his face but a different look in his eyes. Across the table sat Agent Denham, calm and certain, like a man who'd already won. The conversation was short, no shouting, no deals. Just the truth, finally catching up. Denham slid a folder across the table: documents, signatures, wire transfers, lies written in ink. Jordan stared at it all. It was his empire, his masterpiece reduced to paper and proof. He tried to laugh, but the sound broke in his throat. The wolf was caged. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, photographers, and strangers who once cheered his rise now came to witness his fall. The judge read his crimes aloud: securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Each word felt like a hammer hitting the walls of his mind. When the sentence came, time seemed to stop. The room faded, and for the first time in years, Jordan felt small again, not the king, not the wolf, just a man who had gone too far. Prison wasn't the end, it was the mirror. Behind those bars, stripped of luxury and power, he met himself again. No suits, no cars, no cheering crowds, just silence. And in that silence, he realized what he had become. The other inmates didn't care who he was. To them, he was just another story, another man who thought he could beat the system and lost. But Jordan did something unexpected: he started talking. He told his story. The rise, the fall, the madness, all of it. At first, they laughed. Then, they listened. And for the first time, his words didn't sell lies, they sold truth. When he finally left prison, the world was different. His empire was gone, his money vanished, his name a scar on Wall Street's memory. But he was alive, and for a man who once thought he was invincible, that was something. He began to write. He turned his past into pages, his sins into stories, his chaos into lessons. The world, strangely, listened again. People were fascinated not by the wolf's glory, but by his survival. He started teaching, speaking to others about ambition, greed, and control. His voice was softer now, slower, but still sharp with memory. He talked about power, but he also talked about consequences. He warned others about chasing success so hard that you forget who you are. The legend of the Wolf of Wall Street would never die, it would live in books, movies, and whispers in boardrooms. But the man behind it had changed. He wasn't the same boy who walked into Wall Street dreaming of gold. He was older, humbler, maybe even wiser. He still had that fire in his eyes, but now, it burned differently. Not with greed, but with the understanding of what greed can cost. In the end, the wolf wasn't destroyed by his enemies. He was destroyed by his hunger. By the endless need for more. And in that destruction, he found something he'd never had before: peace. Because sometimes, losing everything is the only way to see what truly matters. The story of Jordan Belfort isn't just about money or power, it's about the human heart, about how far one man can go when he stops seeing the line between right and wrong. It's a story of ambition that became addiction, and success that turned into a sentence. He once ruled Wall Street with a roar that echoed across the world. Now, he speaks quietly, teaching others not to follow his path. The wolf still walks not on Wall Street, but among the crowd. And every time he tells his story, the world listens, because deep down, every dreamer, every hustler, every ambitious soul sees a piece of themselves in him. He is the warning and the lesson, the rise and the fall. The man who had it all, lost it all, and somehow, survived it. That is the legacy of the Wolf of Wall Street. He wasn't born rich. He didn't grow up in a mansion or drive fancy cars. He was just a kid from Queens, with fire in his eyes and a voice that could sell anything to anyone. To Jordan, Wall Street wasn't just a place, it was a dream, a living machine made of money, power, and possibility. But this dream would soon consume him. Music swells slightly. When Martin Scorsese brought The Wolf of Wall Street to life in 2013, he wasn't just making another crime drama. He was painting a portrait of excess, a wild, chaotic symphony of greed, charm, addiction, and downfall. And at its heart was Leonardo DiCaprio's unforgettable performance, not as a villain or a hero, but as a man chasing an endless high. Clip: Jordan shouting into the phone, "Sell me this pen." Jordan Belfort's story starts with hunger, the kind of hunger that doesn't fade after success. It's the hunger that grows louder the more it's fed. The beginning of a legend. In the late 1980s, Wall Street was booming. The markets were wild, cocaine was currency, and ambition was everywhere. It was an era where the American dream looked like a shiny Ferrari, a gold Rolex, and a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. Jordan stepped into this world like a spark in a room full of gasoline. He wanted more than just success, he wanted domination. He joined a brokerage firm with nothing but hope and raw talent. And within days, he realized something powerful, that the market wasn't built on numbers or logic. It was built on emotion. Fear and greed were the real currencies. Clip: Jordan watching Mark Hanna pound his chest and hum. Then came Mark Hanna, played by Matthew McConaughey, a Wall Street veteran, a mentor, and a warning Jordan didn't understand. Mark taught him the gospel of excess. You gotta stay relaxed. Cocaine, hookers, and martinis, that's how this business runs. It was a twisted philosophy wrapped in charm and laughter, and Jordan soaked it all in. That lunch scene wasn't just the start of a friendship. It was the birth of a monster. The first fall and the first lesson. But then came Black Monday. The stock market crashed in 1987, wiping out fortunes overnight. Jordan, barely starting his career, suddenly found himself unemployed. It could have been the end. For many, it was. But Jordan was different. He didn't see failure, he saw opportunity. He started from the bottom again in a small, low-rent office selling penny stocks to working-class people. The room was small, the stakes were low, and the money was almost nothing. But when Jordan picked up that phone and started selling, the room caught fire. He didn't sell stocks, he sold dreams. And people believed him. Soon, his commissions were higher than anyone's in the room. He realized that if he could sell garbage stocks and still make a fortune, then with the right system, the right team, and the right lie, he could build an empire. And that's exactly what he did. The birth of Stratton Oakmont. Music picks up tempo, more confident, energetic. Stratton Oakmont wasn't born in a skyscraper or a fancy building. It started in a tiny office with mismatched furniture, wild energy, and a group of young men who believed they were untouchable. Jordan turned that chaos into gold. He trained his team like soldiers. He taught them how to manipulate, persuade, and dominate the phone lines. Every call became a battlefield, and every yes was a victory. Clip: We don't work for you, you work for us. Soon, Stratton Oakmont exploded. They were making millions, then tens of millions, then hundreds. They weren't just brokers anymore, they were gods of their own universe. And Jordan? He became their king. But power has a way of turning dreamers into monsters. Slow montage: champagne bottles popping, private jets, women, drugs, and money raining from the sky. The more he had, the emptier he felt. So, he filled the emptiness with more drugs, more parties, more money, more danger. The American dream twisted. Scorsese doesn't glorify Jordan's life, he exposes it. He shows how the American dream, when twisted by greed, becomes a nightmare disguised as success. Clip: Jordan on stage, screaming, "I'm not leaving." That famous scene when Jordan refuses to step down isn't just a powerful movie moment. It's a mirror held up to our society. It's the moment when ambition becomes addiction. He's no longer chasing success, he's running from emptiness. The yachts, the drugs, the women, they're not trophies. They're distractions from a truth Jordan can't face, that everything he's built is built on lies. The wolf is born. By the early 1990s, Stratton Oakmont had become a symbol of unchecked greed. They were manipulating markets, scamming investors, and laundering millions overseas. But for Jordan, it wasn't enough. He wanted more. Always more. His persona, the Wolf of Wall Street, became legend. He lived like a god, untouchable, unstoppable, and out of control. Yet behind every laugh, behind every party, behind every pile of cash, was the ticking sound of collapse. Music fades into tension. Because every empire built on greed eventually eats itself. And Jordan's empire was about to crumble. Inside the walls of Stratton Oakmont, reality had lost all meaning. The air was electric with ambition, lust, and cocaine. Phones rang like battle cries. Deals were shouted across rooms. Traders screamed, laughed, cried, and partied all in the same breath. It wasn't just a company. It was a cult. And Jordan was its prophet. He taught his disciples how to manipulate people's dreams, how to make them believe that a worthless stock was their golden ticket to wealth. And his army followed him with blind devotion. Clip, pick up the phone and start dialing. His office was a circus of madness, dwarfs being thrown for entertainment, women dancing on desks, and endless rivers of alcohol flowing through every corridor. Money wasn't paper anymore, it was fuel. Fuel for power. Fuel for pleasure. Fuel for destruction. Music quickens, the rhythm almost intoxicating. The more Jordan earned, the more he spent. He didn't just live rich, he lived louder than life. Yachts. Mansions. Private jets. Helicopters. If it screamed "I'm untouchable," Jordan wanted it. And the drugs, oh, the drugs became the heartbeat of his existence. A life of intoxication. Jordan's daily routine wasn't made of spreadsheets or strategy meetings. It was built on pills, powder, and chaos. He'd wake up in a haze, snort a line of cocaine, pop a quaalude, wash it down with champagne, and head to work to inspire others to chase the same madness. Clip, on a daily basis I consume enough drugs to sedate Manhattan. To Jordan, every day was a party. Every victory a reason to celebrate. Every failure a reason to get higher. The boundary between joy and pain disappeared. Between reality and fantasy, there was only the rush. Money became his drug. Power became his oxygen. And in that haze of endless success, he began to lose something far more valuable than all the wealth he'd stolen. He began to lose himself. The illusion of control. Music slows down, turning darker and heavier. The thing about power is that it always whispers lies. It tells you that you're safe. That you're in control. That no one can touch you. Jordan believed that lie. He believed he was invincible, too smart, too rich, too connected to fall. But behind the laughter and flashing lights, cracks began to show. The FBI had started watching. The government had started listening. And every lie Jordan told was becoming another rope tightening around his neck. Clip, Agent Denham staring across the table at Jordan. Agent Patrick Denham, calm, quiet, relentless. He represented everything Jordan hated: rules, honesty, and order. And he wasn't just investigating a company, he was hunting a culture of corruption. Jordan tried to charm him, mock him, even bribe him. But the agent didn't flinch. He was the mirror that Jordan didn't want to look into, the reminder that every empire built on lies eventually collapses. Love, lust, and loss. Outside of his empire, Jordan's personal life was spinning out of control. His marriage was collapsing. His wife, Naomi, beautiful, sharp, and strong, was tired of living in the shadows of addiction and betrayal. The love they once shared was buried under mountains of cash and clouds of cocaine. Clip, Naomi slaps Jordan, "You're not gonna be happy till you've lost everything." Their home wasn't a sanctuary anymore, it was a battlefield. Arguments turned violent. Jealousy turned into rage. And Jordan's obsession with control turned his life into chaos. Even his children, the one piece of innocence he had left, couldn't pull him back. Because by now, Jordan wasn't a husband or a father. He was an addict. Addicted not just to drugs, but to the feeling of being the man everyone envied. The Night of the Lemons. One of the most infamous moments in Jordan's story, the lemon quaalude scene, is more than just a wild piece of comedy. It's a portrait of complete moral decay. Clip: Jordan crawling to his car, slurring, drooling, paralyzed. It's grotesque, absurd, and hilarious, but underneath the laughter, Scorsese is showing us something chilling. This is what absolute excess does to a man. When you believe you are untouchable for too long, you stop being human. You become a spectacle, a creature chasing pleasure until the body gives up. That night, as Jordan's Ferrari crashed and his speech turned to mush, the empire began to rot from within. The parties grew emptier. The laughter sounded fake. And the Wolf of Wall Street was starting to lose his bite. The fall begins. Music shifts to a tense, pulsing beat. The FBI had everything it needed. The evidence, the witnesses, the money trails. The walls were closing in, and Jordan could feel it. He tried to move his money overseas. He tried to outsmart the law. But no amount of money could buy back the illusion of safety. When his closest friend, Donnie, began to crack under pressure, loyalty turned into paranoia. The very men who once worshipped Jordan were now running for cover. And Jordan, the man who built his empire on confidence and control, began to unravel. His voice, once full of command, now trembled. His eyes, once burning with ambition, were now hollow. The wolf was trapped in his own cage. The price of greed. Soft piano fades in reflective tone. There's a moment in the film when Jordan looks out over the ocean from his yacht, surrounded by everything he thought he wanted. The sky is golden, the waves are calm. But there's a sadness in his face. It's the moment he realizes that the empire he built isn't real. That all the cars, the mansions, the yachts, none of it means anything. The higher he climbed, the emptier it became. He wasn't free. He was enslaved by greed, by fame, by his own hunger for more. Clip: Jordan staring silently, wind blowing through his hair. Scorsese captures that silence perfectly, the silence of a man who has everything, yet nothing. The storm. When the yacht scene arrives, the storm that destroys his boat, it's no coincidence. It's poetic justice. The sea, the ultimate symbol of power and nature, rises to swallow him whole. Clip: Mayday! Mayday! We're going down! Jordan screams, pleads, and watches everything he owns sink beneath the waves. For a moment, he's mortal again. For a moment, he's human. But even that near-death experience can't save him. Because by now, Jordan isn't chasing wealth anymore, he's chasing the feeling of wealth. And that, he'll never let go. Narrator. When you build your life on illusions, truth comes like a storm, sudden, violent, and unstoppable. Jordan Belfort's world was collapsing. The wolf had tasted everything, the luxury, the lust, the madness, and now the same hunger that made him powerful was tearing him apart. Music fades to silence. Narrator, softly. But even as the empire crumbled, Jordan wasn't ready to let go. He still believed he could talk his way out of anything. He still believed the wolf could never die. The FBI was closing in. Years of deception, money laundering, and market manipulation had finally caught up with him. His empire, once unshakable, was collapsing from within. Clip: Jordan pacing inside his mansion, sweating, nervous. His friends began to disappear. His partners turned against him. And the loyal army that once cheered his every word now whispered behind his back. Jordan tried to stay calm, but paranoia had taken over. He was no longer the confident salesman shouting over the phone. He was a desperate man trying to outrun his own shadow. The FBI wasn't just taking his company. They were taking his identity, the one thing he had built his entire life around. Betrayal. Music shifts, quiet, tense. When you build an empire on lies, betrayal is not a surprise, it's inevitable. One by one, his closest allies began to flip. The very men who toasted to his success were now signing deals with the government. They traded loyalty for survival. And then came the hardest betrayal: his own decision to turn on his people. To save himself, Jordan agreed to cooperate with the FBI. He wore a wire, recorded his friends, and became the same kind of liar he once mocked. It was the final act of a man who had run out of choices. Clip: Jordan slipping the wire under his shirt, face full of dread. The wolf was no longer hunting, he was trapped. The price of power. Soft piano enters. Scorsese doesn't show Jordan's fall as a punishment. He shows it as a revelation. Because power, when it's built on lies, doesn't just corrupt your world, it corrupts you. Jordan wasn't evil. He was just human, a man blinded by ambition, tempted by luxury, and convinced he was different. And that's what makes his story terrifying. Because he could be any of us. Clip: Jordan's speech to his employees, "I'm not leaving." That scene, where he refuses to quit, isn't just about greed, it's about addiction. Addiction to attention. Addiction to control. Addiction to being the center of the universe. He didn't love money. He loved what money made him feel like. That he mattered. That he was untouchable. That he would never be forgotten. The family that slipped away. The music fades into melancholy tones. At home, the world he tried to keep separate, his family was falling apart. Naomi had had enough. She wanted out. Clip: Naomi shouting, "I want a divorce, Jordan." The love that once glowed between them had turned to ash. He tried to hold her, to beg her to stay, but it was too late. Even his children were just names on a list of things he'd lost. When Naomi walked out that door, Jordan wasn't losing a wife. He was losing the last piece of his humanity. Money could buy yachts and mansions, but not forgiveness. Not peace. Not love. The fall. Low drone sound, quiet but heavy. The day finally came when the wolf was caught. The FBI raided his home, his accounts were frozen, his reputation destroyed. In court, Jordan didn't face enemies. He faced mirrors, every lie, every scheme, every promise he'd ever sold reflected back at him. He was sentenced to prison not for murder or violence, but for greed. For taking too much from a world that never stops wanting more. Inside the cold walls of his cell, there were no fancy suits, no crowds cheering his name. Just silence. The same silence that comes when the music stops, and the lights go out. The rebirth of the wolf. Soft guitar plays, hopeful yet haunting. But Scorsese doesn't end the story with destruction. He ends it with reflection. When Jordan is released from prison, he returns to the stage not as a broker, but as a motivational speaker. He teaches others how to sell, how to persuade, how to believe. He stands before a crowd, asking, "Sell me this pen." Clip: audience staring silently at Jordan. It's poetic because it's the same trick that once started his empire. But this time, there's no energy, no fire, no madness. Just a man trying to find meaning in the ashes of what he destroyed. The audience looks at him in silence. And in that silence, we see the truth. Jordan may have changed jobs, but he hasn't changed himself. He's still selling something, only now, it's redemption. The message behind the madness. Music swells, emotional crescendo. The Wolf of Wall Street isn't a movie about crime or money. It's a story about the human heart, about how desire, when left unchecked, can devour everything good in us. Scorsese doesn't preach. He doesn't tell us what to think. Instead, he makes us feel the thrill, the same rush Jordan felt when he cheated the system, and then he makes us sit with the emptiness that follows. We laugh at Jordan. We're shocked by him. But deep down, we understand him because the hunger that drove him exists in all of us. The hunger to be seen. To be powerful. To win. That's the genius of Scorsese's storytelling. He doesn't create villains, he creates mirrors. Clip: slow montage. Jordan, the office chaos, the parties fading into darkness. And in that mirror, we see our own reflection distorted by greed, desire, and fear. Scorsese's masterpiece. Technically, The Wolf of Wall Street is a triumph. The direction, the pacing, the cinematography, it all dances between comedy and tragedy. The editing, fast and sharp, pulls us into the madness until we can't look away. The camera doesn't just observe, it participates. It moves with the rhythm of greed, fast, loud, unstoppable. And then, when the fall comes, Scorsese slows it down, forcing us to feel every consequence. Leonardo DiCaprio gives one of the finest performances of his career. He doesn't just play Jordan Belfort, he becomes him. Every laugh, every scream, every whisper is alive with contradiction, confidence and fear, triumph and despair. Jonah Hill, Margot Robbie, and the entire cast breathe life into this carnival of corruption. Each of them represents a part of Jordan's soul: loyalty, temptation, chaos, and innocence lost. The wolf that never dies. Music fades to a quiet heartbeat. Even after prison, after ruin, after loss, Jordan Belfort still stands. Not as a hero. Not even as a villain. But as a reminder. A reminder that the hunger for more never truly dies. Because The Wolf of Wall Street isn't just Jordan's story, it's a reflection of us. Our culture worships success, money, and fame, yet condemns the very people who embody it. We love the wolves, even as we fear them. Clip, Jordan's smile, fading to black. In the end, the wolf doesn't vanish. He adapts. He survives. He finds new prey in new industries, in new generations, in new dreams. And maybe, that's the real tragedy. Epilogue, the lesson of the wolf. Narrator, softly. The Wolf of Wall Street isn't a warning about one man's greed. It's a warning about our world's obsession with it. It's about how we measure worth in numbers, how we confuse success with happiness, and how we lose ourselves chasing things that were never real. Jordan Belfort fell not because he broke the law, but because he believed the lie that enough was never enough. Soft music fades to silence. Narrator. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. That sometimes, the biggest crime is believing that more will make us whole. Text fades in on black screen. The Wolf of Wall Street, a film by Martin Scorsese. Music swells one last time, then cuts to silence. Narrator, final words. This is not just the story of a man who lost everything. It's the story of a world that still hasn't learned when to stop. There are films that entertain. There are films that disturb. And then, there are films that redefine how far cinema can push the boundaries of excess, greed, and human madness. Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street isn't just a film. It's an experience, a roaring, chaotic, and intoxicating journey through the dark heart of the American dream. The movie takes us into the world of Jordan Belfort, a man whose hunger for success has no limits. A man who begins as just another ambitious dreamer but ends up as the king of corruption, swimming in a sea of money, lies, and moral decay. From the very first frame, Scorsese throws us into a world where everything feels larger than life. The energy. The pace. The madness. The film doesn't just show greed, it celebrates it, questions it, and then leaves you wondering whether you too might fall for its seductive power. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is fearless. His portrayal of Belfort is not just an imitation, it's a full-bodied transformation. He captures every emotion: the wild laughter, the manic energy, the ego, and the emptiness that hides beneath. But before Jordan Belfort became the wolf, he was just another man chasing dreams. The story begins in the late 1980s, a time of booming markets, expensive suits, and fast-talking brokers. Jordan enters Wall Street as a young, hopeful stockbroker, ambitious, naive, and ready to conquer the world. His first steps into this world are guided by Mark Hanna, played by Matthew McConaughey, a mentor whose advice becomes a prophecy. Mark teaches him the rules of survival in this cutthroat business. He tells him that success isn't about helping clients, it's about moving money from their pockets into yours. That it's all a game, and the only real drug on Wall Street is the thrill of the deal. And in that moment, Jordan learns the first rule of the jungle: morality is a weakness. From there, his journey transforms. He dives headfirst into a world that thrives on deception, where every phone call can make or break a fortune. But when the market crashes and Jordan loses everything, most would give up. He doesn't. Instead, he reinvents himself. He finds a new way to play the game: a small-time brokerage firm dealing in penny stocks. Cheap, risky, almost worthless. But for Jordan, they're a gold mine. He discovers that by selling dreams to the desperate, by promising impossible returns, he can make a fortune. Soon, he forms his own company, Stratton Oakmont, and with it, builds an empire of greed. The energy of Stratton Oakmont is electric. The office is like a madhouse filled with screaming brokers, ringing phones, and constant celebration. Every deal feels like a war won. Every paycheck feels like proof of superiority. Jordan doesn't just sell stocks, he sells fantasies. He gives his employees a purpose: to believe in the illusion of success. Under his leadership, they become loyal soldiers, chanting, cheering, and following his every command. To them, he's not just a boss. He's a god. As money flows like a river, so do the vices. Drugs, parties, and women become the rhythm of life at Stratton Oakmont. Every day is louder, crazier, and more dangerous than the last. And at the center of it all is Jordan the Wolf himself, devouring everything in sight. Music rises heavy, rhythmic bass, like a heartbeat. But behind the laughter and the luxury, cracks begin to appear. The more Jordan earns, the more he loses control. The drugs that once gave him confidence start to twist his mind. The money that once symbolized freedom becomes his cage. Scorsese doesn't judge him. He doesn't ask the audience to hate or love him. Instead, he forces us to feel, to experience the same high that Jordan feels. The thrill of getting away with everything. The rush of being untouchable. The madness of believing that the world belongs to you. Every shot in the film pulses with energy. The camera moves like it's drunk on adrenaline, fast, loud, alive. The editing, the music, the rhythm all create a hypnotic pace that makes you forget you're watching a story about crime. You're watching a story about desire. And through it all, Leonardo DiCaprio holds the screen like a force of nature. His voiceover pulls us into Jordan's head: his justifications, his arrogance, his addiction to power. Even when he's despicable, we can't look away. Because deep down, there's a piece of him in everyone that hunger for more. Music slows. The sound of waves fades in the ocean, vast and calm. As Jordan's empire grows, so does his recklessness. He buys yachts, mansions, and everything money can buy. But what he can't buy is peace. His marriage begins to crumble. His friends turn greedy and dangerous. The line between success and destruction blurs. And when the FBI starts closing in, the movie shifts tone. The wild energy becomes paranoia. The laughter turns hollow. The wolf begins to realize that every empire built on lies must eventually fall. But even in the fall, Scorsese refuses to moralize. He doesn't punish Jordan, he exposes him. He shows us that the real tragedy isn't the jail time or the downfall, it's the emptiness that comes after you've had everything. Faint piano music begins, melancholic yet beautiful. This is not a movie about a criminal. It's a movie about human nature. It's about our endless desire to win, no matter the cost. To feel powerful. To feel alive. Scorsese paints this world not in black and white but in blinding gold. Every frame shines, every scene tempts you. And by the end, you realize the film isn't just about Jordan Belfort. It's about us. Our obsession with success. Our addiction to more. By now, Jordan Belfort is no longer just a man. He's a legend, a myth born from chaos. Every word he speaks feels like law, every move he makes ripples through his empire like an earthquake. Stratton Oakmont has become a kingdom, a monument built on ambition and lies. The employees worship him like a god, chanting his name, celebrating his victories, living his dream. To them, Jordan isn't human. He's immortal. He's proof that you can bend the world to your will if only you dare enough. Inside those glass walls, greed isn't just encouraged, it's celebrated. The air smells of expensive perfume, sweat, and success. You can almost taste the money floating in the air. Every desk is a battlefield, every phone call a war for dominance. The brokers scream into the receivers like warriors going to battle, their hearts pounding with the rhythm of ringing telephones. And Jordan the Wolf sits above it all, watching, smiling, controlling the storm he created. Cut to the boardroom. Jordan steps up to the microphone. The crowd goes silent. He gives one of his most iconic speeches, words that echo like thunder. He tells his people that he's not leaving. He's not effing leaving. The room explodes in applause. It's more than a speech, it's a declaration of war against the system itself. Against the idea that the game should ever end. In that moment, we see it clearly, Belfort isn't just a criminal. He's a symbol of ambition, of rebellion, of pure, unfiltered greed. And it's terrifyingly inspiring. The movie doesn't slow down. It races faster, louder, more chaotic. Every scene feels like a heartbeat about to explode. The parties become wilder, the money flows faster, the stakes get higher. We see Jordan surrounded by everything he ever wanted: mansions, cars, luxury, and endless pleasure. He throws money like confetti. He drives fast, talks fast, lives faster. But inside, something begins to rot. The drugs that once gave him energy now make him hallucinate. His laughter hides exhaustion. His confidence begins to look like madness. He's addicted not just to drugs, but to power, to winning, to being the wolf. Scene change: Jordan at home. Night. Silence. Even at his mansion, surrounded by wealth, Jordan cannot sleep. His mind is restless, filled with numbers, schemes, and fears. His wife, Naomi, played brilliantly by Margot Robbie, becomes both his queen and his prisoner. Their love burns bright, then starts to destroy itself. Every argument between them feels like a battle of pride and ego. Naomi sees through the illusion. She knows that Jordan's world, no matter how golden it looks, is built on sand. And when that sand begins to crumble, it will take everything down with it. But Jordan, blinded by his hunger, refuses to stop. He dives deeper. He finds new ways to hide his money, new ways to trick the system, new ways to stay one step ahead of the law. The sound of waves returns: Jordan's yacht cutting through the ocean. He buys a massive yacht. He buys a helicopter just to fly to breakfast. He buys anything that proves he's winning. But the truth is, he's losing himself. There's a scene: a storm at sea. Jordan and his crew fight to keep the yacht from sinking. It's chaos: water crashing, wind howling, panic everywhere. And in that moment, the storm outside feels like a mirror to the storm inside him. It's not just a battle against nature. It's a battle against fate. The storm scene isn't just thrilling cinema, it's symbolism. It shows us that no matter how powerful Jordan thinks he is, nature, life, and truth always win in the end. As the movie moves into its middle act, the tone changes. The fun is still there, the laughter, the parties, the madness, but beneath it, a sense of dread grows. The FBI is watching. The walls are closing in. Enter Agent Patrick Denham, played by Kyle Chandler. He represents everything Jordan isn't: calm, patient, moral. A man who believes in rules in a world where Jordan has rewritten them. Their interactions are electric, a battle of charm and wit, cat and mouse, greed versus justice. When they meet on Jordan's yacht, it's not just two men talking. It's two worlds colliding. Jordan tries to bribe him, seduce him into his world, but Denham doesn't bite. He sees through the charm, the arrogance, the fake smiles. He knows that the wolf's days are numbered. Cut to the office again. Celebration, chaos, loud music. Even as danger grows, Jordan acts as if he's untouchable. He keeps making more money, hiding more cash in secret accounts, flying it overseas, building illusions on top of illusions. He believes he can outsmart anyone, even the law. Scorsese shows this not through lectures, but through rhythm. The editing becomes faster. The camera never rests. Every cut feels like a heartbeat. Every moment feels like it's leading to a crash we all know is coming. The soundtrack full of classic rock keeps the pulse alive. Songs by artists like the Rolling Stones and Billy Joel fill the scenes with energy, reminding us that this is more than a biography, it's a celebration of madness. But beneath the chaos, Scorsese plants moments of silence, small, fleeting reminders that everything built on greed must fall. We see Jordan losing touch with reality. We see friends betraying friends. We see his marriage collapsing. And yet he still smiles. He still believes the dream will never die. Because the wolf cannot stop hunting. Even when the prey is gone. Even when the forest is burning. Even when the echo of his own howl is the only thing left. Music fades. The screen darkens. The faint sound of an FBI radio crackles. The world Jordan built is starting to crumble. The FBI is closer than ever. The news of frauds and scams spreads. The dream is dying, and everyone around him starts to run for cover. But Jordan, arrogant, fearless, delusional, still believes he can fix it. Still believes he can buy his way out. Still believes he's untouchable. And that belief will be the final illusion that destroys him. Music rises low, haunting, like a storm building in the distance. The Wolf of Wall Street is not a movie about money. It's a movie about obsession. About the madness that grows when you believe that nothing can stop you. About how easy it is to lose your soul when everything you touch turns to gold. Every empire built on lies eventually faces the truth. And for Jordan Belfort, that moment comes like a slow, merciless wave. The FBI closes in. The headlines start to scream. The people who once chanted his name now whisper it in fear. The King of Wall Street has become its most wanted man. The walls that once echoed with laughter now echo with silence. The office that once felt like a temple now feels like a tomb. Phones stop ringing. The champagne dries up. The cheers fade into the distance. And at the center of it all sits Jordan, still smiling, still pretending, still refusing to believe that the party is over. Cut to a quiet room. Jordan and his lawyer sit under the harsh light of interrogation. The FBI gives him a choice. Confess and cooperate, or lose everything. For the first time, the wolf hesitates. Scorsese slows everything down. The loud music stops. The camera lingers on DiCaprio's face, that familiar mix of charm and fear. We see the realization dawn on him that all the money, all the women, all the power, mean nothing if you can't escape yourself. So Jordan does what he does best: he negotiates, manipulates, and performs. He becomes a salesman again, selling his own redemption like one more deal on the phone. Cut to the final party before it all collapses, the music deafening, lights flashing, people dancing like there's no tomorrow. This is the last celebration of a dying empire. The wolf is howling for the final time. The laughter feels forced, the joy feels desperate. Behind every smile is fear. Behind every toast is the knowledge that it's all about to end. When the FBI finally arrests him, it's not a dramatic gunfight or an explosion. It's quiet. Cold. Simple. Reality doesn't end with fireworks, it ends with paperwork. Scene change: Jordan in prison. The camera follows him as he walks through a courtyard filled with inmates playing tennis. And then, Scorsese does something genius. He shows that even in prison, Jordan can't stop selling. He can't stop performing. He's still the same man, the salesman, the manipulator, the storyteller. The message is clear: you can take away his freedom, but not his addiction. Because his real prison is inside him, built from greed, ego, and endless desire. The scene fades to white. A new image appears Jordan years later, free, now giving motivational speeches. He stands before a crowd of dreamers, telling them how to succeed. The same man who once sold lies now sells inspiration. The same voice that once promised fortune now preaches wisdom. And yet if you look closely, the glint in his eye hasn't changed. The wolf is still there. Just wearing a different suit. Voice softens, tone reflective. Scorsese doesn't show us a villain. He shows us a mirror. He makes us question our own reflection, how much of Jordan Belfort lives in each of us. When we laugh at his jokes, when we cheer at his success, when we secretly wish we had his confidence, we become part of the story. We become the audience that applauds greed. We become the crowd that forgets where the line between right and wrong really lies. That's the genius of The Wolf of Wall Street. It doesn't just tell a story. It seduces you. It makes you complicit. It makes you enjoy the madness before showing you the price of it. Cinematic montage flashes of Jordan's journey, the first day on Wall Street, the chaotic office, the yacht in the storm, the FBI chase, the prison yard. Every shot is a reminder that power is fleeting. That success without limits becomes destruction. That greed always eats itself alive. And yet, we can't look away. Because deep down, we understand it. We crave it. We live in a world that rewards it. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance stands as one of the greatest in modern cinema. He doesn't just play Jordan Belfort, he becomes him. His voice, his movement, his madness, it's a dance between brilliance and insanity. Margot Robbie, as Naomi, adds fire and elegance, her character a symbol of both beauty and consequence. Jonah Hill, as Donny Ossoff, brings wild energy and disturbing loyalty. Together, they create a world that feels dangerously alive, a world you both admire and fear. Soft piano begins, echoing the theme of reflection. Scorsese's direction ensures that every frame is dripping with energy. The cinematography, the editing, the classic rock soundtrack, they all work together to create a rhythm that never slows down. The film moves like a heartbeat on caffeine, pulsing, unpredictable, unstoppable. But beneath that rhythm lies something more human. A story about the cost of chasing more. About the emptiness that comes when success replaces meaning. About how easily a dream can turn into an addiction. By the end, when the lights fade and the music stops, what stays with you isn't just Jordan's story. It's the feeling of having witnessed the rise and fall of an entire generation's dream, the dream that money can buy happiness, control, and love. A dream that looks beautiful on the outside, but hollow within. Scorsese leaves us with a haunting question. In a world that celebrates wealth above all else, can anyone truly stay clean? Camera fades to black. A single line appears on the screen. There's no nobility in poverty. I've been a rich man and I've been a poor man, and I choose rich every time. Jordan Belfort. The line echoes powerful, seductive, dangerous. It sums up the film's paradox: we know it's wrong, but it still sounds right. And that's the brilliance of The Wolf of Wall Street. It doesn't teach you a lesson, it tempts you to fail it. Silence. Then, a deep narrator voice. This film isn't just about a man. It's about a mindset. A mirror held up to society, reflecting our desires, our greed, our hunger for more. And as long as that hunger exists, there will always be another wolf. Soft music plays the same melody from the beginning. Voiceover. So, when the credits roll and the lights come back on, ask yourself, what would you have done if you were Jordan Belfort? Would you have walked away? Or would you have taken one more bite of the apple? Because maybe that's what the film is truly about. Not the fall of a man, but the truth about all of us. Music swells to a final crescendo. The screen fades to black. Narrator, final line, slow and deep. This was The Wolf of Wall Street, a story of greed, glory, and the dangerous beauty of wanting more. Fade out. Text appears on screen in white letters. Disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.